Post-Hurricane Milton.
Chairs were just floating, couches were floating, everything was floating.
How the storm slammed Central Florida and what remains. Giving a helping hand.
My mom lives here, so I didn't want her to be alone.
To those who evacuated Milton. Going out of business.
We don't have huge crowds coming into the store.
The reality for small business owners in South Florida. And a treat than a trick. A Halloween display that means more than scary ghosts and clowns. These stories and more coming up on Newsbreak.
Hello, South Florida. I'm Dylan Pizet. And I'm Benjamin Cure. Today is Friday, October 11th, 2024.
Live from the Lee Caplin School of Journalism and Media in North Miami, this is Caplin News.
First Helene, then Milton. Now Floridians are beginning the reconstruction process. Rescue and recovery efforts continue as millions of Floridians remain without power.
CNN's Ivan Rodriguez has more on the aftermath of Hurricane Milton from the East Coast.
Florida officials say Hurricane Milton set off a number of deadly tornadoes before making landfall. County officials say well over 100 homes were damaged here in St. Lucie County. Floridians dealt a 1-2 punch by major hurricanes, now trying to pick up the pieces.
What we need going forward is just kind of empathy for our residents. They just went through 2 major hurricanes in our area, and so many have lost their homes, their livelihoods, and now they have to find a new place to call home.
A once in 1,000 year rain event flooding homes in areas that weren't expected to flood.
It was terrible. The water was so cold.
The chairs were just floating, couches were floating, everything was floating.
On the West Coast in Clearwater, entire lives upended by flooding in a non-evacuation zone.
These are folks who didn't have much and they've lost everything.
While on the East Coast, communities flattened by an unprecedented rash of tornadoes. Multiple people have died, and authorities say more casualties are expected as search, rescue, and recovery efforts continue.
We're sifting through all this debris. We're trying to use dogs to search for people. We're trying to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to rescue as many people as we can.
At least one of those tornadoes struck a retirement community consisting mostly of modular homes. The sheriff here in St. Lucie County says search and rescue efforts are still underway. In Fort Pierce, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
Several people were reported dead after a series of deadly tornadoes in St. Lucie County. Before Hurricane Milton made landfall, more than 160 tornado warnings were issued in South Florida, with St. Lucie County being one of the most affected areas. More than a dozen people have died, and hundreds of homes were either damaged or destroyed in the area. Many community members say they have never experienced anything quite like this.
Never have I experienced damage or the amount of tornadoes that came through this area. And it was the most frightening thing I've ever lived through.
Authorities urge residents to remain home and let first responders do their job as search, rescue, and recovery efforts continue.
No storm surge in Miami, but a population surge from Milton as evacuees fled from the hurricane's cone. Caplin News reporter Anna Trinidad headed out to a local Publix to show a different kind of hurricane preparation.
Because of Hurricane Milton, residents from the Central Florida area have been migrating to their families here in South Florida. We went to a few grocery stores and asked both shoppers and employees how Milton refugees have changed things up in the past few days.
This week, South Florida residents have been met with a large amount of guests. Hurricane Milton has caused many Central Florida residents to move south to avoid strong winds and record-breaking floods. Relatives have had to open their doors for multiple Central Florida evacuees.
My mom lives here, so I didn't want her to be alone, and I also have lots of friends in here. Besides the point of that, the friends that I travel with, 4 girls, they all want to come down because they also have families here in Miami.
Residents are not the only ones that had to evacuate.
So my mom's currently in the hospital, and when I went today to the hospital to visit her, I saw they were moving a lot of people from the areas that were affected, like the central and northern area, down here because they don't have space in the hospitals over there, and they needed to evacuate. So it's been kind of a lot because they need to share the rooms with multiple people.
The combination of both hurricane panic and extra guests have caused South Florida residents to buy essential products in bulk, leaving supermarkets empty.
Yes, a list of supplies has been out of stock, like the toiletries, toilet paper, paper towel, the water in the aisles, the milks, and the eggs.
Despite the influx of residents from the Central Florida area, grocery stores were able to keep up and restock quickly. Reporting for Caplin News from Doral, I'm Anna Trinidad.
500,000 migrants could lose their legal status after President Biden announced he will not renew the humanitarian parole program.
The initiative, which benefits individuals from Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, and Nicaragua, faces significant challenges. Caplin News DC Bureau reporter Gracia Pacheco is live in Washington with more information.
Good morning. Biden's announcement will affect migrants from Venezuela, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Cuba. Now these people must seek an alternative to stay legally in the U.S. or face deportation.
As the Homeland Security page explains, the humanitarian parole is a temporary status that allows migrants from different countries to apply through a U.S. sponsor to travel legally to the country and granting them work permit. The effort started in 2022 for Venezuelans and in 2023 for other nationalities, with the goal of reducing illegal crossing at the border. Andres Albino is a Venezuelan and a beneficiary of the program who arrived a year ago.
Beneficiario del parol de que puedo optar por permiso de trabajo sin problema, puedo sacar mis papeles, mis documentos sin problema, puedo trabajar legalmente sin problema.
Paralegal Areli Rico, who has over 12 years of experience in immigration, explained the legal options available for these migrants.
Venezuelans will be able to apply for TPS, which is temporary protected status. For the Haitians, it's a similar situation. They're also eligible for TPS. And then obviously with Cubans, they have the Cuban Adjustment Act.
Like Albino, more than 500,000 immigrants from these countries will have to find another legal solutions to avoid deportation. However, some nationalities could face some challenges.
Where it gets tricky is for the Nicaraguans. So there's really not a lot of options specifically for them as opposed to everybody else. One way that they could remain here is maybe through some sort of employment visa. You know, there's also student visas for those that might be eligible. Say the last resort for a lot of people is basically to apply for asylum.
Last Friday, in a post on X, House Republicans on the Homeland Security Committee criticized the Biden administration, claiming the humanitarian program was fraudulent. But Albino disagrees.
Yo creo que no es un programa fraudulento. A muchas personas que quieren emigrar a un país de la manera correcta, porque honestamente nadie abandona su país por gusto.
The Department of Homeland Security will continue to accept new applications for parole. However, current migrants won't get the extension. With TPS and DACA, these three programs allow at least 3 million immigrants to live in the U.S. under temporary status. Reporting for Caplin News in Washington, D.C., Gracia Pacheco.
There's a sales struggle for small businesses. As Caplin's Alexandra Phelps reports, an oversaturated market and the leftover effects of the pandemic are to blame.
With the market oversaturated by an influx of online platforms catching the attention of consumers, small businesses are finding it more and more difficult to keep the lights on in their shops.
With the rise of cheap and convenient services such as Temu, TikTok Shop, and Amazon, on top of the over 19 million new business applications since the end of 2020, this post-pandemic economy has left many entrepreneurs holding onto their work by the skin of their teeth.
We're still very new, so we don't have huge crowds coming into the store. And between my regular job and this, my wife is coming in and helping on weekends. We're basically running ourselves pretty ragged to keep the doors open right now.
For a struggling shop, the revenue earned is not always enough to cover their rent and needs. Out of the 33.3 million reported small businesses in the USA, 27.1 are one-man shows, their owners typically not being able to afford paying employees along with everything else. But for some, just finding employees willing to work at such a small level has become difficult.
It has been very difficult in terms of recruiting and retaining employees. And so that a lot of businesses have had to restructure in terms of their operations, like their employees, and try to figure out different ways to kind of work smarter, not harder.
While Freakhouse's securance of a niche assures consumers that the shop will last despite its trials, only about 50% of businesses survive after 5 years, a contrast to the 80% that survived their first.
This crash in support for small businesses has reached such an extreme that entire malls made up of these shops are being completely shut down or even demolished, such as Miami's own Sunset Place and many more. Urging you to consider shopping small, this is Alexandra Phelps with Caplin News.
One of the greatest tennis players of all time announces he's hanging up his racket.
That's still ahead, and so is this story.
When you come in person, you can make a donation to this purple box right here, which has lights on it that aren't turned on. You'll see the sign down below, which tells you that that's the Autism Speaks donation.
A Halloween display raises more than just scares. Newsbreak will be back in 2 minutes.
See us dream. See us remember. See us protest.
You matter. Your feelings matter. Your identity matters. Everything about who you are matters.
See us fight back. See us rebuild. See us shatter stereotypes. See us inspire. See us united. See us now.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Just in time for spooky season, a boy used his passion to create a Halloween display that raises money for autism awareness. With spooky skeletons and eerie pumpkins, this horror house is sure to set you up for a good scare. The artist behind the creations, 12-year-old Braden Willis from Providence, Rhode Island. But these chilling expositions aren't just for fun. Braden has autism and uses these spooky assortments to raise money for the Autism Speaks nonprofit.
When you come in person, you can make a donation to this purple box right here, which has lights on it that aren't turned on. You'll see the sign down below, which tells you that that's the Autism Speaks donation.
Braden has been making these displays for most of his life. Spanish tennis legend Rafael Nadal announces he is retiring. The King of Clay will hang up his racket at the early age of 38 due to injuries. His final tournament will be with Spain at the Davis Cup in November. With 22 Grand Slam titles, Nadal retires as the second most decorated men's player in history behind Novak Djokovic.
The Florida Panthers fall to an even record in their first away game of the season against the Ottawa Senators. It was a costly game for the Cats as they lost their captain, Alexander Barkov, to an injury late in the third period. The Senators scored in the first 2 periods, and the team just could not recover. The final score was Ottawa 3, Panthers 1. The Panthers will travel to upstate New York to play the Buffalo Sabres on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You're watching Newsbreak, and we're coming right back.
How prepared is your family if a tornado shows up at your doorstep, or a flood, or a hurricane? You can't just turn away a natural disaster. That's why it's important to go to ready.gov/plan now. It has the tools and tips you need to make an emergency plan with your family. So if disaster comes knocking, let's go. You'll be ready to help keep your family safe. It's just a pizza. Yes. Make a plan today.
I debate all day. It's what I do. But there are some things that are undebatable, like your mental health. I was in a dark place when my brother passed away in a car accident. I was depressed in ways I never imagined. I reached out, and my sisters came, my pastor, my therapist. They helped me get through it. I found that the more I spoke up, the healthier my mind became. When you love your mind, you can go so much further. Find mental health resources at loveyourmindtoday.org.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right because a few hours ago in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign, not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
I help our fellows design their paths as creative entrepreneurs. My experiences serving startups, creative businesses, and cultural organizations, and my journey as a queer mixed immigrant with Haitian and Arabic roots, inform the co-creative environment we foster at Radcliffe. We leverage our collective diversity to encourage the building of lifelong personal learning networks and mindsets that stimulate continuous innovation.
That's all the time we have for Newsbreak. I'm Benjamin Cure.
And I'm Dylan Pizea. Get more news anytime at caplinnews.fiu.edu.